can Caleb afford to get off to a slow start? Because, Chase, I don't think there is a way that Caleb Williams can afford to start 0-2 and for sure not 0-3. My idea is this. We thought he was going to be amazing and generational last year. It's fine. You're not. You're a rookie. But at the point in time in which we give you an amazing offensive mind in Ben Johnson, we give you a first-round pick in offense at tight end, Loveland, then a second-round pick at receiver in Burdens, and then we acquire Joe Tooney from the Chiefs, and then we acquire, I believe, Jonah Jackson from the Rams. We give you 3 new starting offensive linemen,
Drew Dalman,
a new starting tight end, a new starting wide receiver. After drafting a first-round wide receiver, Caleb, if you struggle again, will you ever be good? That's the question that's fair to ask. Now, it's human nature, Chase. Not that it's realistic.
Yeah, you're right.
I was thinking about this myself, Chase. I went to the Olympics this past year, James Jones. Came back from the Olympics, and all of a sudden I had this lingering cough. I go to see this expert physician, and he's like, hey, Acho, do this and do that, and da-da-da. And I still had this lingering cough. Chase, you don't want to been coughing for a year and a half. And I still have this lingering cough. And the doctor was like, hey, big dog, do this, do that, you'll be fine. But it kept occurring. Then finally, after 3-4 months, I was fine. I'm thinking about this similarly to the schedule. At the point in which you got the expert physician in Ben Johnson, if you're still struggling, I'm just wondering, Caleb, are you always going to struggle? Now, obviously, the cough is gone and your boy is fine, but the point in which you see the expert physician, you get the expert head coach in Ben Johnson, if you're still struggling, are you ever going to be good? Obviously, I believe he will, but those are the questions that will happen after week 3 if they struggle.
I think that's a really fair question if he struggles the whole season. I don't know if I can go as far for me personally in saying, hey, that question is good if he starts 0-4. Right? I do think that with a new head coach and I was going to name all those guys, thank gosh you did, because they loaded up. I came up here and said, hey, I think the Chicago Bears won the NFL draft. Hey, they've done amazing things revamping that offensive line. At the end of the day, it falls on Caleb. And for me to say, hey, can he afford to start slow? The answer is no. But I think 2-2 at the bye is doable. I don't know if you think that's slow based on the schedule and what they have the first 4, right? 2 division opponents. If they start 2-2, like I think they really have to beat the Cowboys and Raiders in week 3 and 4. I don't necessarily know if they'll beat the Vikings and Lions in week 1 and 2. And here's why I say this. Like I would say, talent-wise on the Bears roster, they have similar or better talent than a lot of the teams they face.
Yeah, very true.
Talent does not win football games. It is the entire situation of Ben Johnson being there, implementing his systems, especially on offense. Defensive team, they're always usually pretty good in the thick of this and scoring points per game, stuff like that. When you look strictly at offense, though, it usually takes 4 to 5 weeks for an NFL offense with a new offensive coordinator and new weapons to really get a feel for what their identity will be. And so if he starts slow in 1 and 3, we've seen plenty of stuff, right? Who knows if they're going to make the playoffs? I don't know the stats in 1 and 3, but I do think that actually in this scenario, a week 5 bye, which they have, could potentially help the Bears. It could help them in a couple ways. One, you can self-scout yourself after the first 4 games. Hey, what have we done well? What do we need to focus on moving forward? Focus on our strengths, make our weaknesses better. All right, are we a run the ball out of shotgun team? Are we a run the ball under center team? What do we want Caleb to be? Do we want him to be an RPO guy? Can he be what Jared Goff was in Detroit for Ben Johnson? All these answers can hopefully get answered by then, and at least then they have a week to go self-scout during bye week and understand, hey, this is the formula for moving on, and especially mentally. That's where I want to go before I end here. Mentally for Caleb Williams, we've seen some flashes physically. Mentally, how does he handle this new offense? How does he handle all the spotlight being on him? Because everyone knows in America that the Bears did everything in their power to make Caleb Williams an elite player. Now it's your job.
Okay. Let's talk about this. So I think this question has a few answers, honestly, like most questions, honestly. I do not believe. So when we say, okay, can Caleb afford to get off to a slow start? Again, it's like according to who? To the team? Will the players turn on him? Will they get frustrated? The media? the media will pounce. If he gets off to a slow start, the media will pounce, and we can't pretend like that doesn't matter to players, because it does. The players hear everything. We can talk about all we want. Oh, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is inside the locker room. None of the other noise. They hear it all. They hear every single thing. That much is very, 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 very obvious. It's 2025. We can pretend. We don't have to pretend like these guys are just like, oh, I don't care what anyone else says, or I don't pay attention to the media. Of course you do. Of course you do. And that stuff does matter. It really does. And I think that then also can kind of infect the locker room, because then the other players are kind of like, oh, Caleb's not good. Caleb's not good. And you get rumors all over the place, and, this, that, and the third. And so I think that's, a possibility if you get off to a true slow start, like 1-5, 1-6, 2-6, something of that sort. But in terms of, slow start, it's like, let's just look at these first 4 games, okay? You lose to the Minnesota Vikings, I think that would actually be your toughest game to lose. Like, in terms of tough, in terms of like, it would hit you the hardest, because it'll be JJ McCarthy's first game of his entire NFL career. And if JJ McCarthy now steps up and wins and outduels Caleb Williams and just looks better, looks more comfortable, people are really going to start to be like, JJ McCarthy looked better than Caleb, and that was his first game ever. And that'll just have that will be not only run wild with the media, but players will see that too. And Chicago Bears players will see that, because they're playing against it. They're watching JJ, both offense and defense. And if they now see JJ McCarthy looking more comfortable and being a better quarterback in week 1 against Caleb Williams, they get a front row seat to that. And that does now start to have people be like, oh, is Caleb just not good? Is he the odd man out in this NFL, in their draft class? And that's real conversation that the players are going to start to think and have. And that can fester. No doubt about it. And like I said, the media will absolutely positively run with that and magnify that even more. And the players will see it, and it can. So playing week 1 against JJ McCarthy, like, that's an important game from my viewpoint. You can lose to the Lions, especially if the Lions hit the ground running and continue to be great. I think losing to the Raiders is a tougher one, because I think the Raiders are going to be a significantly better team than they have been in the past. But there's still this idea of, like, they're the Raiders. It's Geno Smith. What is that guy, like, a year away from retiring? Like, huh? Like we're supposed to beat that team. And then you go up against the Commanders. And if you lose that game and Jaden Daniels continues to ball and play great and Caleb doesn't, it's like it really starts to solidify Jaden Daniels is clearly the better quarterback than Caleb Williams. He should have been number 1 overall pick. And then again, the Chicago Bears team, they get a front row seat to that. And so, like, those are the potential narratives that really could actually work against this team and work against Caleb. And again, I just think the one thing that I would really encourage people is to, like, don't downplay that it's not always just a media construction. Like, players, the GM, coaching staffs, owners, like, they're all susceptible to that stuff as well. The media holds a lot more power in just the public conversations in general. And that's why it is a tough schedule. It's definitely not it's not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. If you really look at this schedule, you would have to say that really the only easy game that you have, the most confident you can have about an easy game would be week 7 Saints, right? So that's a tough place to be in, but I do believe in Caleb Williams. I do believe in Ben Johnson. I do believe in this roster. I do believe what they're going to be able to achieve. And I think, if anything, it's more likely that Caleb Williams plays pretty well and clearly looks better, but the record doesn't necessarily 100% show that. And then I do think that's when you will have opportunistic media people who are just like, oh, see, Caleb Williams not that good. And it's like, no, he is really good. But this is a tough spot to be in. It's tough. The Commanders have a head start. The Ravens have a head start. The Bengals have a head start. The Lions have a head start. The Vikings, in theory, I know J.J. McCarthy technically holds them back, but the rest of the team head start. Like, there's so much continuity with all of those teams, with the quarterbacks, with the coaching staffs, with a lot of the people on the roster itself. Like, that is a head start compared to when you bring in a second-year quarterback and a brand new first-year head coach and a lot of other new pieces, especially offensively. So, like, they get that head start. And then you kind of start to get in a little bit more equal playing field with the New York Giants bringing in Russell Wilson, bringing in, who the heck is the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Nobody knows. The Cleveland Browns. Like, those are some of the games that you would have liked a little bit earlier on in the season to kind of get your legs underneath you, because then you can, and then it kind of does leave the door open to be able to kind of have a couple tough losses. But I don't think it's fair to jump and say Caleb Williams has to beat, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. He has to outduel Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like, to do that in the first half of the schedule, I'm just like, that's a tough one. That really is. And the Commanders took a lot of steps forward to be even better than they were last year. And so, again, that stacks the deck forward. I mean, Caleb Williams wasn't able to develop last season at all. I mean, he even came out and said, like, they didn't even really, like, go over the film with me or teach me how to break it down, or, like, the whole situation just sounded like not even a clown show, like a cartoon. I mean, seriously. I mean, it was just like, what is this, Nick Jr.? Like, what are we doing here? Disney Jr., whatever. Like, just absurd. And so I really feel like this is his rookie year. So yeah, even though Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams were both drafted in the same year, Jaden Daniels has a head start. He got a head start because he was with the better team, the better coaching staff from the jump. And then his team now gets to build off of that. There's not a whole lot that Ben Johnson gets to build off of that. And also, Ben Johnson has to now just go over the film and figure out who is Caleb Williams. There's so much more of a learning process that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams have to go through now in year 2 that Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels do not have to do. So it's like the Bears and Caleb are already at a deficit in that regard. And that's why I don't think it's fair what Acho is saying, where it's like, well, it's fair to say, well, will he just always struggle? Because I went to the Olympics and I had a cough. Like, all right, dude, we get it. You went to the Olympics. That's awesome. You know how many people get coughs during the winter and, start to have like lingering coughs and stuff? Like, who cares? What are we saying here, man? But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Bears are good enough to actually truly win the division. And I think that there's a real chance that the Lions take a true step back. But then when I look at this schedule very closely, they're at the mercy a little bit of how good are the Raiders this season. Do the Cowboys have a high-powered offense now with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens? How good is J.J. McCarthy in year 1? How much of a step back do the Detroit Lions take? Does Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers have momentum, and are they actually taking a step forward? Like there's enough things that are out of the Bears' control in that regard that takes a little bit more of the position of power that I think that their roster and coaching staff could have, that I think that they're just a little bit at the mercy of that, especially because of when you're playing these teams as well. So yeah, I mean, you're obviously playing the division winner twice because you're in the division. You're playing the Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, the two NFC Championship game teams. You're fortunate you didn't have to play the Chiefs. You don't have to play the Bills, but I think the Ravens are clearly just as good as those other teams. I mean, realistically speaking, before the Lions got all their injuries, you could say that the Ravens, the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Lions. So those 4 teams are like, were legitimate Super Bowl caliber teams. They were right there. And quite frankly, the Cincinnati Bengals team, their offense was clearly Super Bowl caliber. I mean, that offense was, Joe Burrow was just electric. It was their defense that was awful. And so I really imagine that this Cincinnati Bengals team is going to be way more closer to the Super Bowl AFC Championship game level Bengals rather than the Bengals who missed the playoffs. So that's another team that you can then add to the mix of like, that's going to be that's not going to be an easy game. I don't think the defense, I can't imagine that the defense is just as bad as they were last year. I just can't. And I do imagine that offense will be right around what it was, maybe slightly less because it was so great. You can't imagine it to always just be top, but you know, that's another tough, you know, game to add to the mix. So, but yeah, I don't feel the need to hyper focus on Caleb and be like, can he afford to get off to a slow start? What about this? What about that? I think if we're actually looking at it through a more grounded perspective, we can explain away a lot of struggles and forgive it, especially because I'm looking at this like it's his rookie year. But at the same token, I can totally admit that the media will run wild, and even the other players on the team can still be like, I saw JJ play better, and Jaden Daniels is clearly better. You know, like those narratives can legitimately fester. So that is something that Caleb has to deal with, and I do think he'll be able to deal with it. But it's a harder situation to do, and especially when you have a first-year head coach, Ben Johnson, who I believe in, but it's not like he owns that locker room. It's not like Ben Johnson owns the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are his team. That Sean McVay has that. Andy Reid has that. Kevin O'Connell at this point with the Vikings has that. Like, so you can navigate that a lot more skillfully when you're really established with the team itself. And Ben Johnson doesn't have that. So, you know, there are things stacked against the Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, but doesn't mean that they're not going to survive it or overcome it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears? Do you think that they can afford to get off to a slow start? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.